Good morning, friends, and welcome. Let's start our satsang off today with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, great masters, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswarji, beloved Master Paramahansa Yogananda Ji, saints of all religions, we bow at thy feet. Divine Mother, we are thy children, seeking our home in thee. Receive us on thy lap, guide us, protect us, uplift us into thy consciousness as we attune ourselves to thee and as we practice thy presence. We are thine, Mother. Receive us. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. The topic today is practicing the presence of God. We'll start with a chant by Swami Kriyananda Ji. Then we'll meditate.
Through many lives I've drunk the cup of laughter. No man could tell the pleasures I have known. The stars in the endless sky, if one could count, would come to billions. Yet as vast as are their numbers, so many years I've wandered far from you. Yet as vast as are their numbers, so many years I've wandered far from you. Through many lives I've drunk the cup of sorrow. No man could tell the bitter tears I've shed. The drops in the endless sea, if one could count, would come to billions. Yet as vast as are their numbers, so many years I've wandered far from you. Yet as vast as are their numbers, so many years I've wandered far from you. Through countless lives, I've sought your cup of sweetness, found other cups, yet thirsted evermore. The streams in the hills of time all found their way into a desert. Every noon of bright fulfillment, ere many hours did sink to evening gloom. Every noon of bright fulfillment, ere many hours did sink to evening gloom. I long for you in summer and in winter, only for you my heart thirsts day and night. I've learned that the sweetest songs ears ever heard were but your echo. Lord, at last, fill me completely, for nevermore I'd wander far from you. Lord, at last, fill me completely, for nevermore I'd wander far from you.
Let's meditate now. Let's inhale and tense the whole body. Inhale with a double breath. Exhale, relax. Twice more. Tense with will. Vibrate the body. Relax. Feel the flow of energy. Sitting with the spine straight. Fix your gaze at the point between the eyebrows. Uplifted in the light of God consciousness. There, call to God, reveal thyself, reveal thyself. And feel Divine Mother's touch of blessing in your heart. We'll meditate for about 5 minutes now. I'm reading from Affirmations for Self-Healing by Swami Kriyananda. On God remembrance. To remember God means not only to think of Him constantly, but to realize that finding Him is an act of remembrance truly. For it is from Him that we have come. When the clouds of delusion evaporate from our minds, what will be left is what was there always, hidden behind the clouds, the blazing sun of divine consciousness. One should not strain nor reach out mentally to think of God. Know that He has been yours always, nearer than your nearest thoughts and feelings, nearer than the very prayers you offer Him. Think not merely about Him, think to Him. Share with Him your passing feelings, your idlest fancy. Talk with Him. Practice His presence, at first perhaps for minutes a day, then for hours, then all the time. Let's do this affirmation together. Loud, then more and more quietly, and finally whispering and then mentally. I will live in the remembrance of what I am in truth. Bliss infinite, eternal love. I will live in the remembrance of what I am in truth. Bliss infinite, eternal love. I will live in the remembrance of what I am in truth. Bliss infinite, eternal love. I will live in the remembrance of what I am in truth. Bliss infinite, eternal love. I will live in the remembrance of what I am in truth. Bliss infinite, eternal love. Mentally now, gazing up at the spiritual eye, I will live in the remembrance of what I am in truth. Bliss infinite, eternal love. Pray silently with me. Lord, Thou art always with me. Help me to feel behind my thoughts Thy inspiration, behind my every emotion, Thy calm, all transforming love. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. We'll have readings now, first from Whispers from Eternity, and then from the essence of the Bhagavad Gita.
Good morning. This is the prayer demand to see God in everything. O Father, may I behold Thee above, beneath, behind, around, wherever I turn my gaze. Train the children of my sense never to stray from Thee, who dwellest at the heart of everything. Turn my eyes inward to Thy changeless beauty. Attune my ears to silence, that I may hear Thy subtlest music. Breathe on me the heavenly scent of Thy sacred presence. Orient-wise I will worship Thee, placing the candles of my five senses on the altar of my love. Thus I will contact thee in the first pale shafts of dawn, absorb thee in the bright light of noon, expand in thee with the hidden glow of twilight, and merge in thee in the silver moonlight. Always will I keep alight on my inner altar the mystic taper of my love for thee. Shanti.
The Sense of Bhagavad Gita by Paramahansa Yogananda. That yogi rests forever centered in me, whatever his way of outward living, who sees me at the heart of all beings. An exercise worth practicing whenever one looks at another human being is to think, my higher self is also in him. In him, too, our oneself is struggling through his ego to find its true nature. Complete perfect bliss through all human experiences, true love in human companion, true divine recognition in human fame, true divine power in fancied power over others, true inner wealth in property and swelling bank account. All mankind longs for basically the same fulfillment. Try then to see God everywhere and never exclude him mentally from anything you behold or experience. In this way, it will be easier for you to approach him, who is everywhere and to whom all souls are equally dear and equally his own. Om.
We'll hear an excerpt from a talk by Swamiji now.
You have to live with joy. You have to live with love. There's that lovely story Master told about God in heaven, just a story, obviously. God in heaven sending Narada down to earth to find who the real devotees were. And Narada came down and he met many devotees and he wrote down all the names of these great devotees. And then finally he came upon an old man. He was 85 years old. And he said, "Oh, you've been meditating a long time." "Yeah, I've been meditating 65 years. And he said, "Well, this is great, 65 years of sadhana." He wasn't thinking wisely at 65 years. What's that in eternity? But he said, "Oh, well, I'm here from heaven, and I've brought a message. I've brought a mission from God to try to find all the devotees in this world." "Oh, you have you? Then why ask your Lord when you go back why he hasn't come to me?" Well, Narada was a bit shocked at this one. And he said, "I've been meditating for 65 years and still he hasn't come." And Narada thought, well, that really isn't very kind of God. And so he went on, he wrote this man's name down at the top of the list. He thought, this is a devotee. And then he saw a young man who was a little drunk. He'd been drinking a bit too much, and he was trying to put a post in the ground. He was making a fence, and he just couldn't quite hit that hole in the ground. And as he was waving around, he was cursing God, "Why don't you come and help me like this?" And Nara was shocked. And he said, he thought, nobody speaks to God like this, blaming God for your own drunkenness and asking God to come when you're not even fit to go to the church and meditate and pray. And so anyway, he stopped because he was charged with the mission of speaking to everybody who called God's name. And so he stopped and talked to this man, although with a sinking heart. And the man said, "Oh, you're from heaven, are you? Well, then when you get back, for God's sake, please come. Please tell him to come. I keep calling him and he doesn't come." And Narada was scandalized that this man should presume that God would even think of coming to him. But anyway, he said, "All right, I've promised to tell him, so I will." So he went back and he read this long list of people, and then he came to this hoary old hermit, and started talking about him, and God said, well, it's strange, I don't know him. Lord, I sometimes wonder about you. How come, how come you don't know somebody who's been calling your name 65 years? His name is, and he's repeated it. I'm sorry, I don't know his name. It's not written in my heart. And then he said at the very end of his long list, he started to talk about this drunkard. Oh, yes, I remember. I know him. Lord, you know him and you don't know him. The Lord said, well, just go down and try something for me. You'll understand. He said, tell each of them that I will come, but only after I have finished passing elephants through the eye of a needle. And so he went to the hermit, and he said that God will come, but only after he's finished his present job of passing a whole herd of elephants through the eye of a needle. And the hermit said, who ever heard of passing elephants through the eye of a needle? Goodbye, God, and all your crazy crowd. I've wasted 65 years. I'm going back to enjoy myself for the few years I have left. And Narada was very distressed to hear this. And then he went and he saw this young man who was a little drunker than ever and working on the second pole only. And as soon as he saw Narada, he dropped his pole and ran over with open arms and embraced him. He said, tell me, my lord, what has he said? And Narada said, well, he's busy right now with a job he's taken on of passing a herd of elephants through the eye of a needle. But as soon as he's finished, he'll come. And the young man said, oh, he who could pass worlds through the eye of a needle in an instant must be already ready to come. And he started dancing, and he took Narada by the hand and danced, and suddenly they found that God was dancing in their midst.
Welcome again, everyone. Such a beautiful story, and so wonderful to hear Swamiji's voice and the joy that he exuded and exudes through having the presence of God with him all the time. I was thinking of an example of this that Swamiji told us, of someone who came to where he was living with Master. And it was a woman who was very heavy and sad and low energy. And she had every day wore a black dress and cape, gown and heavy beads, and never smiled. And Swamiji said she didn't last a week there. She just didn't have the right magnetism or the right spirit. You can see in the face, in the eyes, in the posture of someone who has the living, dynamic presence of God in their life. For inspiration that comes, for joy, love, anything that you need in your life, God is a dynamic, loving, joyful, deep reality that you can see, you can feel, you can touch. And I remember Master, from one of his statements, he said that the depictions of Jesus that he's seen, that he was always down and, depressed looking. And Master said, that's not the Jesus that I know, that he was one with God. He had the power of the whole universe. He had the joy and the love of the whole universe. And I remember one of my relatives recently wrote me, and some relatives don't really know why we're doing what we're doing, especially for Americans. And she said, well, what is it that you're doing there? And do you believe in Jesus? And do you know Jesus? And I wrote back, I said, I'm with them every day. And she never wrote back. And that's the point. We're to be, not just to read about and to profess that you are this and I believe and I'm a member of the church. To have the presence of God means that He's in your heart. He's in your smile, in your vibration. And to always know, not when after 65 years, once I've been meditating that long, then he must come. And Master would tell, or Swamiji would tell this a beautiful story of Chaitanya with his devotees, his disciples. And one day, some of them were asking him when they would find God. And he said to one or another, well, you maybe a year, a lifetime, maybe you a couple of more lifetimes, maybe you a few lifetimes. And then someone who was very close to him came and said, Master, what about me? And he said, oh, 1,000 lifetimes. And the disciple walked away, and the other disciples were aghast. They didn't know what to think. And so they went looking for this disciple to support him, to aid him, encourage him. And they went out, and the disciple was out on the balcony, and he was dancing in ecstasy. And they said, brother, haven't you heard that what the master said? It's going to take you 1,000 lifetimes to find God. And the disciple said, brothers, have you not heard? He said, I would find God. And in that moment, the master came and he touched him. And right then, he found God. And the master said, I wanted to show the others the attitude it takes to find God. And that's that in every moment, moment by moment, hour by hour, day by day, year by year, that you're living in the presence of not when I will find God, but I have him. He's with me. Master would say, I'm sick of people talking about my karma and I have to do this and all that. He said, they just need to learn to love God. And Master, his disciple Rajasi, even when it was a very dark time for Rajasi, God is still there. And I know during this time, some people have lost faith. They've become discouraged. They feel God isn't there. He doesn't listen. But when Rajasi was going through that dark period, because before that, he was in the light all the time. And then he went through a period of testing of darkness. And all he could see was a speck of light of God. When before, he was enveloped in light. But what did he do? He didn't lose his faith. He didn't become discouraged. He looked at that speck of light and he would meditate on that one little speck. And then as he continued his sadhana, it became bigger. Every time he meditated, he could see more light, and then more light, and then more. And then out of that light came each one of the masters. Swami Sri Yukteswarji came and said, all is well now. And each of the masters came and they blessed him. And we may think that they don't listen, but we have to keep a conversation with God and keep calling. Master said that when he found God, he asked Divine Mother, why did it take so long? why didn't you come before? And he said, Divine Mother's response was, there were still a few desires. And he had to rid himself of those desires. And you probably all remember the beautiful story from the New Path when Master had that vision of Divine Mother at the Christmas meditation. And he was just so, he spoke to her out loud so everyone could hear. He was so enwrapped in her love. And he kept saying, you're so beautiful, you're so beautiful. And then he started saying, oh, don't go, please, don't go. And then he said, oh, the desires of these people are making you go away. Please don't go. And we have to remember that really our motto is like Sister Yanamata's, God alone. God alone. Even if you don't feel it 100%, it's the mantra of the devotee, of the disciple, God alone. No matter what befalls me, what happens with my health or my family or my job or my income, God alone. And I recall when Swamiji wrote that lovely chant, I want only thee, Lord. And when Swamiji would write chants, I mean, it was so wonderful. He'd write a song, here's a new song, and someone would sing it. And then the choir would sing, here's a new chant, someone would play it, then he'd have all of us chanting it together. So this chant came, and I think many people were thinking, because that's the whole chant, I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. And I remember I just had many other desires then, but Swamiji said, and he could feel it. He said, even if, he told all of us, even if you don't feel that yet, affirm it. It is your reality. Just like Master said, affirm samadhi. Even if you're not in it, even if you don't meditate well yet, affirm it. It's who you are. From joy I came, for joy I live. In that sacred joy, I melt again. And so that calling, sincere, deep calling has to be there. And Master said, to those who think me near, I will be near. And anyone who calls, it says in autobiography, to Babaji with devotion, that he will come. These are the times, if no other, if not now, when? To call with a deep longing. I remember one of the parents of one of the Ananda members at Ananda Village, her name was Mrs. Sanchez, very, very devout Catholic woman. And she would visit from time to time. And she was out walking at the village one day. And she saw Master there. And she looked, and I believe it, because she was a woman of great faith, great presence of God that she felt. And she said, to Master, she asked him, do you come here often? And he said, oh, I'm always here. And it makes you wonder, the masters are near. They're dear. Divine Mother's everywhere. Master said Divine Mother is the nearest of the near and the dearest of the dear, closer than your own breath. And she was so taken by that. She was overwhelmed. She couldn't talk, even to her daughter, for a number of hours about that experience. And Swamiji, too, when he was working on the Bhagavad Gita, essence of the Bhagavad Gita, he said at a certain point, Master's writing these words through me. And you could sense it in the house. And we asked him one day, Swamiji, is Master here with you? And he said, oh, yes. He was practicing the presence of God all the time. In all that he was doing, you could feel Master's presence. And so the call from our hearts, the sincerity of our love is a magnet that draws God. And then we have to remember that we can't sit back and say, oh, God, come, come. There's no magnetism, there's no energy. Master said to say, I will reason, I will, and I will act, but guide thou my reason, will, and activity. So to practice the presence of God is not passive. You sit on the couch with a cup of chai and expect Divine Mother to do everything for you. Oh, Master didn't help me this time. Well, what have you done for yourself? God helps those who help themselves. And I couldn't help recalling when we first came here to India. I mean, it was such a, I mean, it still is such a wonderful time. But the beginning of anything, when you're just starting out and there's nothing, there's not a lot of help and no one's around. I remember it was such a wonderful time. Swamiji would say, now you all don't sit here, go out. Go out and teach, and go out and spread Master's teachings and teach Kriya Yoga. And he would bless each person who was going. And there would be 5 or 6 or 7 of us going out. Many, you know, Dharma Dasji, of course, Jamal, Jayaji, various ones, Karpani, who was staying here for some time off and on, different ones, Haridas, and various people. We were just so happy. And we would just think about, okay, we had to plan everything. We didn't know anybody. We didn't know anybody in any of the other states. So we'd have to do the promotions. Okay, then, okay, get the airline tickets. Okay, now let's get the hotel. Okay, now let's get down there. And okay, now let's go check the hall out. Let's get the hall cleaned up, set up the chairs, registration table. Then we did it so joyfully and with so much energy and enthusiasm. Oh, we need a book table. Get the books, get the book table set up. And then after that, okay, now it's time to give the talk. You just were so happy. This is practicing the presence of God. It's not just in my meditation, nothing happened. It's in meditation, that kind of dynamism inside yourself, of course, and asking for guidance. Master said, look here and put your prayer out to seek what you should do. Seek God's guidance. Pray, Divine Mother, hear my prayer. Master, are you there? And then feel their response in your heart, deeply in your heart. And then the thing most people don't do is they don't do anything. Act, move, get moving, make things happen, be dynamic, be joyful, be inspired, be energetic, feel the prana flowing, and let Divine Mother serve through you. Let her presence be felt in you. Practicing the presence of God means you have a dynamic spiritual life where God is alive in your heart, in your thoughts, in your energy, in your posture, in your eyes, and everything. It's not passively wishing, hoping that something's going to happen. And then he can be with you, she can be with you anytime, anywhere. I was recalling Master when he said he wrote his poem. It wasn't just a poem, it was his experience of samadhi. Where did he write that? In the presence of God on the New York subway. That's an incredible story. He was in the presence of God there. And he said, well, no one asked for my ticket, actually. And he said, really? No one even saw me. So you can imagine how much in the presence of God he was. He became invisible. And so, but he told that beautiful story, that example to say, you can feel God's presence anywhere. And I've read a wonderful book that I recommend to you all. It's called The Hiding Place. It's the story of Corrie ten Boom and her sister and her family during the Second World War. And she was a saint. You can get online and just hear some of her talks, very deeply in the presence of God, and her sister, Betsy. And she tells a story there of when they were in a concentration camp. And they felt the presence of God. And people feel now, oh, there's so much this and that, and I don't feel God's presence. They felt the presence of God. Someone had given them excerpts from the New Testament of the Bible. Just one of the guards, I believe, gave it to them. And they had prayer meetings. So beautiful. It just reminds me of the prayers that we're doing now. Every day, several times a day, they had prayer meetings and they would read from the Bible, and there would be 1,000 people in one of those places where they were sleeping. And it was full of mosquitoes and a horrible situation. And the guards would come to different ones of those quarters. But every time they would come near theirs, they wouldn't come in. And the sister, Betsy, was very devout. She had faith no matter what. And she kept telling Corrie, her sister, no matter what happens, we have to practice God's presence. We know God is with us. And Corrie sometimes would say, I don't know if I believe that. And she said, look at these mosquitoes. Why would God be in these mosquitoes? And Betsy said, just know, Corrie, there's a reason behind everything, and God is with us no matter what. So the guards one day, and they weren't supposed to have a Bible or pray. You can just imagine that. And so they had the group and they were sitting, praying and reading. And they saw the guards come by the window, and they heard one of them say to the other, let's not go in there. It's full of mosquitoes. Isn't that an incredible story? So otherwise they would get beaten and maybe killed. And just remember that there's God's presence always. What can we do? Meditate, pray for others, feel the Om vibration around us, chant Om Guru if you're feeling distressed, Om Babaji, call to the masters, put on some of Swamiji's music, just as we've been playing today, and we'll play one after this. Call up a Guru Bhai, put on a chant, play a chant. All of these call the presence of God to us. And finally, we have to realize we can't do it on our own. I will close with this wonderful example of Swamiji. When he lived and breathed the teachings, more than anybody that I know, he just was always in the presence of the divine. And one time Swamiji was about to give a satsang, and he rarely canceled things. I remember one time he was coming to India from Italy to do several programs, big programs, and he called, and Jayaji told me this story. He called Jayaji and said, I'm just, my body's just not well, and I want to come, but I just don't know if I can come. And he said, will you all be all right if, can you all do the programs if I don't come? And of course, Jayaji said, just Swamiji, it's okay, please, just take care of yourself. And so then they hung up the phone, and Jayaji said, within 5 minutes, Swamiji called back. He says, I'm coming. And that was just his spirit. I'm coming. And he did. It wasn't easy, but he did it. But at this instant, this story, he was about to give the Sunday satsang at Ananda village at the meditation retreat, and he had a kidney stone attack. Very, very, very painful. And he said he couldn't even move. He couldn't move enough to go to the car for them to drive him to town to see a doctor. He said he just was in so much pain. And then that went on for a couple of hours, and the satsang was going to be maybe, an hour later. And he said he prayed to Divine Mother, not for himself, because he didn't want to pray for himself. But he said, Divine Mother, if you want me to give the satsang, you're going to have to take this pain away. And I wasn't there then, but I saw Swamiji tell this story many times, and here in India several times. And he said, as soon as I said that prayer, the pain was gone like this. It was over. And I went and I gave the satsang, but he said, I felt so much bliss that I still could barely talk because I was so much in Divine Mother's presence and love. So in these times, let us remember she's ever near, the masters are ever near. If we take the time to call them, to love them, to be with them, they will always, always be with us as well. God bless you all. Let's meditate on this song of Swamiji's now, God's Call Within, and then we'll do an arati.
Listen, listen, whispering within your soul, hints of laughter, hints of joy, sweet songs of sadness, of quenchless yearning for the light, for my love, your true home. Long your heart has played the dancer, long you've toyed with merest shadows of the treasures left behind you, deep in your soul. Long you plumbed the dark for answers, long you've begged from beggars' empty hands, gifts of life they too were seeking, gifts none could share. Friend, how long will you wander? Friend, as long as you seek your home in a land where all are strangers, love locks her door. Leave to the weak his craven life, to the coward leave his dreaming. Oh, my saint, wake up, reclaim the light, seek the truth behind all seeming. Leave to the weak his craven life, to the coward leave his dreaming. Oh, my saint, wake up, reclaim the light, seek the truth behind all seeming. Turn, turn, turn within, in silence of soul, in cave of love, find my abode. Listen, listen, whispering within your soul, hints of laughter, hints of joy, sweet songs of sadness, of quenchless yearning for the light, for my love, your true home.
We'll have the arati now.
Sri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. 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 Father, Mother, friend or God, we thy wonders all proclaim. Father, Mother, friend or God, we thy wonders all proclaim. Father, Mother, friend or God, we thy wonders all proclaim. May our thoughts be only of thee, train our hearts to sing thy name. May our thoughts be only of thee, train our hearts to sing thy name.
As you gaze upon the light, feel a blessing at the spiritual eye from God, from our masters. Now let's share their light with all those who are in need and with the whole world. Visualize anyone you know who's especially in need of healing. Rub the hands together. And let's chant Om 3 times, sending the divine light out to these souls in need and to the whole world. Om. 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 Let's close with a prayer. Divine Mother, Great Masters, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswarji, beloved Master Paramahansa Yogananda Ji, saints of all religions, We offer the flowers of our devotion at thy feet. O Divine Mother, help us to always practice thy presence, to be immersed in thy love, in thy light, in thy joy. We are thine, Mother. Be ever with us as we attune ourselves ever more deeply to thee. Bless us all, Mother. Om Shanti, Shanti. God bless you all. Have a wonderful day.